Hey guys, welcome back. Today I decided to have a look at how our favorite class was doing in AOE on the PTR before the release of 10.2. We've seen some patch notes and we've gotten very minimal changes in the last few weeks, so not a lot's changed. But please note this video does come with two caveats that I had with the previous video. The PTR again, still got a few weeks left to run before 10.2 drops, so there's still chances of changes in tuning. And with all those changes in tuning, it also means that the talent selections and rotations are still being simmed and worked out. So with those caveats in mind, I wanted to see how the spec was performing from a way to play it versus the amount of DPS that it does. Though we do get to see some of that. So let's check it out, and we're going to start with Arcane. So kicking off with Arcane, here's the gear and talents we ran. We're playing with this Orb Barrage spec, which I haven't done much with, and it honestly made the spec feel a little bit clunky, I think, for a better word. You were constantly sending out the orbs and barrages and orbs and barrages, and it sort of made you want to change what you were doing next. It sort of felt like it was slowing the spec up a little bit. Never really knew which button to press next, as I didn't want to be not casting, but I also didn't want to be casting an Arcane Blast if I could be sending out another 4 stacked Arcane Barrage. So it made it feel a little bit clunky. Some of that was probably worsened by the PTR's 180 ping that I was playing with. As you can see in the bottom right hand corner, it did burst really high, up around 600-700k in a point, and it evened out to around 250 to 300k sustained AOE DPS over the minute and a half that I was doing it. The Barrage Orb feedback loop feels really good. Despite the clunkiness, sending barrages and orbs, especially in the circumstances when you get 3, 4, 5 of them back to back, starts to feel real nutty. Like you're doing lots of damage and it feels good to be pressing those buttons. It's going to be heavily dependent on tuning and dungeon routing, but I would not be too surprised to see Arcade doing really well in Mythic Plus next year, especially early Mythic Plus when you're doing lower keys with lower mob health, when that front end burst really steps up. It's going to have to battle with Fire's Cauterize and Frost's general utility, but with enough front end burst, it's definitely going to do well. Alrighty, let's get into a bit of Frost Mage. Gear and talents on the screen. Basic changes from the 10.1.5 rotation include the addition of Comet Storm and Glacial Spike to your rotation priority list. Still trying to maintain Orb and Blizzard uptime during the packs, while shattering our spells using Novas, Elemental, Freezes, and Flurries. Overall, with a bit of practice and I think slightly less ping, this rotation feels pretty smooth. All of your cooldowns and spells line up pretty well, with all the CDR reducing everything as you continue to play. Every mob gets slowed just generally throughout your rotation, allowing your tanks to kite more effectively during M+. As always, it probably won't see a lot of play during Sanguine weeks, but in those big fortified weeks when you need constant damage and good slow and mob control, Frost is going to be up there. Just going by general feel, it's a slower pace spec than Fire and Arcane, and you're just maintaining uptime on your Blizzard and Orb as your core rotation. The Shattered Spikes feel really nice, and they do some solid spike damage. Actually, I've always quite liked Frost in M+, and yet again, I think it's going to be a fairly strong contender in the M+ meta next season, depending on tuning and things like that, but at the moment it's looking pretty solid. Time for Fire Mage, my favorite. As usual, gear and talents are on the screen. Not a lot of changes from the current Fire Mage AOE rotation as yet. I know the boys are cooking some stuff up with Hypothermia, and I'm interested to see what that looks like. But we're still using Flame Strike and Meteor to do the majority of our damage in AOE, making sure our meteors are hitting inside of Combust or on larger mob counts. We're still running SKB, keeping us in combustion more often and for longer periods of time. Because of the tier set changes, I experimented with heavily using my resources on pull, trying to get as many GCDs inside the tier set buff as possible. The AOE spec still feels nice and bursty, and those numbers are looking fantastic on my screen, the way they flash about. Moving from the 10.1 tier set to the 10.2 tier set, I definitely felt more starved for Phoenix Flames to help keep the chain combusts going. We have a similar issue in single target at the moment, but overall, I think Fire is going to be very strong in Mythic Plus. It's still doing big damn, and as always, we have AI, Lust, and Cauterize to keep us in the meta. A solid little tanky caster spec for your keys, boys. Just a quick final glance at DPS and damage profiles. We can see down the left here that during the 1 minute 30 pulls, Arcane did pull ahead as you hope it would, being a burst class. It has strong upfront burst followed by mini burst at approximately 45 seconds. Frost is really consistent, lower overall, but starts strong, stays strong, and ends strong. Fire doing what Fire does best, and still my favorite spec of the game, starting really strong and then burst with each SKB you put down, maintaining a nice overall DPS through its Flame Patch and Ignite. Again, these numbers don't really mean all that much, but with solid tuning, all three of these specs are looking pretty viable in Mythic Plus, so play what you think is fun. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you have a great day.